She had a capable team and a strong board and 20 years of industry experience. When I asked her when last she had a conversation where someone genuinely challenged a major decision, before she made it, she went quiet for almost 30 seconds. And then she said, I can't think of one, not recently. And that is the CEO fish bowl. And if you lead at a senior level, this video is about why that fish bowl is probably tighter than what you think. You've probably built something that works. You have people you trust, advisors you respect, a team that delivers. But here's what you might also have noticed, even if you haven't said it out loud. There's a particular kind of quiet that comes with leading at this level. The quiet of being the only person in the room who carries the full weight. Everyone else has a stake in your decisions. Your team filters their input through job security and the relationship with you. The board evaluates your judgment. Your most loyal people, the ones who love you, often soften what they have to say to protect you. So you process alone. You move fast. You make the call. And that is not a weakness. That's what you are trained to do. That's why they pay you. But it has a cost that accumulates slowly, and most leaders don't notice it until they're already paying it. So here is what isolation really looks like from the inside. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. Decisions start taking longer than what they should. Not because your judgment has deteriorated, but because you're turning the problem over internally when it should be tested externally. Assumptions go unchallenged, not because you're arrogant, because we know you're not, but because there's genuinely no one around you with a standing to challenge them honestly and objectively. And decision fatigue accumulates invisibly until the judgment you want to deploy on your most important calls are already depleted by everything that came before. So Deloitte research on this was striking. 45% of executives report burnout linked to decision overload. Those in structured peer environments report 50% greater clarity in decision making. That's not a marginal improvement. It's a different operating reality. I want to tell you about Sarah because she was living exactly in that space. Sarah came into coaching about 8 months ago. A senior executive at a resource sector company, full P&L responsibility with a massive team. She was effective, she was trusted, and privately exhausted. When I asked her about the quality of her thinking environment, who was genuinely challenging her thinking before major decisions, she listed her team, her board, and her CFO. And then I asked one follow-up question. Of those people, who has zero stake in your answer? And she stopped and she looked at me and said, none of them. They all have a stake in the answer. And that's the moment that changed the work. Not because she needed to find different people, but because she'd never examined the structure of her thinking environment before. She assumed that having smart people around her was the same as having honest challenge available to her. But it isn't. And over the next few months, we built something different. A small collective of CEOs in a similar position. We call it the RISE Collective. Leaders with comparable weight of responsibility, no shared industry, and that was deliberate. Facilitated sessions, so the conversations are targeted, not casual conversation. A room where rules were clear. You're here to think better, not to look good. Egos stay outside. In the third session, Sarah said something out loud that she told me she hasn't said to anyone in her organization. I think I've been approaching our market positioning the wrong way. And I think I've known it for 6 months, quietly. And the room didn't react with any alarm. It leaned in. And by the end of the session, the admission had become the foundation for a strategic pivot. She's now 6 weeks into executing with outstanding results. That's what changes when the room is right. Here's what I want you to understand about the CEO fishbowl and why it's not a character flaw, it's not a skill flaw, it's not a capacity flaw. The higher you go, the fewer people exist who can challenge you from a position of true equivalence. Think about what equivalence requires. It requires someone who understands the real complexity of your decisions, not simplified version of them. Someone who carries comparable responsibility. Someone who has no stake in your answer, no job to protect, no relationship to manage, and no performance to demonstrate. That's a very specific type of person. They don't appear in most senior leaders' day-to-day environments. What most leaders have are stakeholders. Smart, well-meaning, often deeply capable stakeholders. But they are stakeholders. And the research from McKinsey on this is worth sitting with. CEOs with strong trust networks, not strong teams, but networks, a strong network built on genuine peer equivalence, are twice as likely to remain in the role beyond 5 years. Not because they're protected from difficulty, but because their leadership becomes sustainable rather than heroic. They stop carrying the weight alone and start distributing it intelligently. There's a concept I use in my coaching work that I want to offer you here. I call it thinking range. The difference between the width of thinking you can access singularly and the width of thinking you can access in the right group environment. Isolation doesn't cap your intelligence, it caps your range. In complex environments, the kind you're operating in, range is everything. And it's the difference between the decision you would make alone and the better decision that emerges when your assumptions are tested. The leaders I've watched build something that lasts are not the ones who had the most information or the fastest instincts. They're the ones who build thinking environments with the quality of their decisions. So here's the practice I want to offer you this week, and it's quite simple. One question, but sit with it properly. Before your next significant decision, pause. Who has genuinely challenged this thinking, not agreed with it, not helped you articulate it better, not affirmed that you're approaching it sensibly, but challenged it from real understanding with no stake in your answer? And if the answer is no one, it's not a failure, that's information. It tells you something about the structure of your current thinking environment. Ask the follow-up question, what do I need to build or access to change that? Because the quality of your decisions is a function of the quality of the room you are thinking in. And that room is something you have agency over. It's not fixed. It's not permanent. It's a structure, and structures can be built. You don't need more information. You need a better conversation. Sarah worked into our first group session with a list of problems that she needed to solve. And 8 months later, she left with something I don't think she expected. A thinking environment that makes every problem easier to navigate, not because we gave her the answers, because she finally had access to a room where the questions were the right ones. If you're a senior leader who's trusted and quietly carrying more than you should have to carry alone, I'd like to have a conversation with you, 45 minutes. Just the two of us looking at your current thinking environment. What does it actually look like? and what could be a better thinking structure available to you. No framework, no pitch, just clarity. Click the link in the description and book a discovery call. And if it didn't resonate, I'll see you next week.